Emily had always found solace in the quiet corners of the library, where the scent of old books mingled with the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. As the town's dedicated librarian, she cherished the rhythm of her daily routine, each day blending into the next like the pages of a beloved novel. This particular afternoon, however, was different. As she rummaged through her handbag, hoping to find her car keys, her fingers brushed against something unexpected. It was a crumpled lottery ticket, one she had almost forgotten about. "Ugh, I can't believe I still have this," she murmured to herself, shaking her head. "I should have thrown it away ages ago." Her curiosity piqued, Emily decided to check the numbers. She pulled out her phone, her heart racing as she navigated to the lottery website. She read through the numbers slowly, her brow furrowing in concentration. One by one, she matched the digits, her breath hitching in her throat. "No way, no way," she gasped, her hands trembling as the realization hit her. She had won, significantly. The prize amount felt surreal, almost like a dream she was afraid to wake from. Emily's mind raced as waves of emotion washed over her. There was exhilaration, of course, but it was swiftly followed by a deep-seated fear. What would this mean for her and Jake? Their life together was built on simplicity, on shared dreams rather than material wealth. She remembered how they had laughed over their modest home, their frugal dinners, and the way they found joy in the smallest things. Would this newfound fortune change everything? As she drove home, her heart was a jumble of excitement and anxiety. Thoughts spiraled through her mind like leaves caught in a whirlwind. Would Jake be happy? Would this divide them? She had seen how money could corrupt even the strongest relationships, and she feared that their love might not be immune. When she arrived home, she found Jake in the garage, his hands stained with grease as he tinkered with an old engine. His brow was furrowed, and a frown tugged at his lips. Emily took a moment to appreciate the sight of him, the man she loved, immersed in his work. She walked over, her heart pounding in anticipation of sharing her news. "Hey, Jake," she said, trying to inject some cheer into her voice. "I have something to tell you." He glanced up, his expression shifting slightly, but the tension remained. "Can it wait? I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with this thing. It's driving me nuts." Emily felt her heart sink. "Oh, sure. It's nothing important, I guess." She stood there for a moment, watching him, unsure of how to bridge the gap between her elation and his evident frustration. After a beat, she decided to approach him again. "You know, I really think we should talk about some things. I had a surprise today." Jake sighed, wiping his hands on a rack. "Emily, I'm really not in the mood right now. Work is piling up and I could use a break from everything." "Okay," she replied softly, disappointment creeping into her voice. "I understand." As she retreated to the kitchen, the weight of her news settled heavily on her shoulders. She poured herself a glass of water, trying to push away the sense of dread that gnawed at her insides. Would they ever have the chance to celebrate this together? That night, as they sat at the dinner table, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that everything was shifting beneath her feet. She picked at her food while Jake seemed lost in thought, his silence echoing louder than words. "Jake," she began hesitantly, "can we talk about us? About what's been going on lately?" He looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" I feel like there's a distance between us. I want to share something big with you, but I need to know that you're here with me, too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emily, I've got a lot on my plate right now," he replied, frustration lacing his tone. "Can we not do this tonight?" Her heart sank further. "Of course," she said, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Just let me know when you're ready." As she lay in bed that night, the shadows of doubt crept in. Emily turned the lottery ticket over in her hands, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had wanted to protect their love, to shield it from the potential chaos that wealth could bring. But now, she questioned whether her silence was doing more harm than good. The next morning, she woke up with a resolve. She needed to talk to Jake, needed him to understand her fears and her hopes. But as she made her way to the kitchen, she found him already there, looking more worn than usual. "Jake," she called, concern knitting her brows together. "Are you okay?" He turned to her, his face pale and drawn. "I've just been feeling off lately," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I think I might have pushed myself too hard." Emily stepped closer, her heart racing. "What do you mean? Are you sick?" "Just a little tired, I guess." "Nothing to worry about," he said, but his eyes betrayed him, flickering with something unspoken. As the day wore on, the weight of her secret felt heavier than ever. She knew she had to tell him, but fear gripped her heart. Would he understand her intentions? Would he see her as someone who was trying to protect their love, or as someone who was running away from it? "Jake," she said finally, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I need to tell you something important. I won a lottery prize. A big one." His expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and confusion crossing his features. "What? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was scared," she admitted, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I didn't want this to change us." "Change us?" "Emily, this could be a new beginning," he exclaimed, but she noticed the shadow of worry in his gaze. "I know, but I also worry about what it might do to us," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want to lose what we have." Jake studied her, his brow furrowing. "You won't lose me. We'll figure this out together." But as he spoke, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was brewing beneath the surface. She needed to know if their connection could withstand the trials that lay ahead, and as the day unfolded, she would soon be faced with a revelation that would test their bond like never before. Emily sat at her favorite spot in the cozy corner of the local cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirling around her. The sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on her anxious face. She was supposed to be filled with excitement after winning the lottery, but the weight of impending decisions sat heavily on her chest. The vision of her husband, Jake, flashed in her mind. His strong hands stained with grease, the furrow in his brow deepening as he concentrated on another mechanical puzzle. Would this newfound wealth push them apart? Or could it be the lifeline they needed? She tapped her fingers nervously against the wooden table, contemplating her next steps. The thought of divorce lingered in her mind like a shadow, refusing to dissipate. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the money might alter the very fabric of their relationship, a relationship she treasured and fought hard to maintain. "I need to talk to Sarah," she muttered under her breath, her friend and confidant, who had always been a guiding light in the fog of her uncertainties. Later that afternoon, Emily found herself sitting across from Sarah in the brightly lit cafe. Sarah, a vibrant woman with an infectious laugh, had always been a source of comfort for Emily. As they exchanged pleasantries, Emily felt the weight of her secret pressing down on her heart. "Sarah, Emily hesitated, searching for the right words. "I won the lottery." Sarah's eyes widened, a smile breaking across her face. "Emily, that's incredible. What are you going to do with all that money?" Emily took a deep breath, her heart racing. "That's the thing. I don't know. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm scared. I love Jake, but what if this changes everything between us?" The smile faded from Sarah's face as she leaned closer, concern etched in her features. "What do you mean?" "I've been considering divorce," Emily confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know it sounds drastic, but I just feel like money will ruin the simplicity of what we have. I want to protect our love." "Oh, Emily," Sarah said softly, her eyes reflecting empathy. "You can't just throw away your marriage because of fear. Have you talked to Jake about any of this?" Emily shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "He's been so stressed with work. I can't add to it right now. I just thought, maybe if I handle this quietly, it'll be better for both of us." "Emily, I understand where you're coming from," Sarah replied gently, "but running away from it won't solve anything. You need to communicate with him. Besides, if he finds out later, it'll hurt him even more." Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. She glanced at the screen, her smile faltering. "It's Mark," she murmured, her husband's name heavy on her lips. "I should probably take this." Emily nodded, but her heart ached with the knowledge that Sarah's own marriage was struggling. As Sarah stepped outside to take the call, Emily felt a pang of guilt. They were both navigating turbulent waters, lost in their own dilemmas. When Sarah returned, her demeanor had shifted. "Sorry about that," she said, a hint of frustration in her voice. "We had another argument. Mark doesn't understand how much this promotion means to me. He thinks I should focus on home instead of my career." Emily reached across the table, squeezing Sarah's hand. "I'm sorry. It's hard when the people we love don't support our dreams. I feel like I'm on the brink of losing everything too. Maybe we can help each other," Sarah suggested, her eyes lighting up with an idea. "You work on your marriage, and I'll focus on mine. We just need to communicate. Our relationships are worth fighting for." Emily nodded, the resolve slowly building within her. "You're right. I need to talk to Jake. I want to share my fears and this unexpected wealth with him, but I wish I could be as brave as you." "Bravery comes in many forms," Sarah replied. "Sometimes it's about confronting the hard truths instead of running away. Just remember, it's okay to be vulnerable with him." As they finished their coffee, Emily felt a flicker of hope reigniting within her. Maybe the key to saving her marriage lay not in secrecy, but in honest conversation. The thought of facing Jake, of opening her heart, filled her with both dread and anticipation. Later that evening, as she prepared dinner, Emily felt a mix of apprehension and determination. The smell of garlic sautéing in the pan filled the kitchen, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Jake would be home any minute, and she needed to find the courage to speak her truth. When Jake finally walked through the door, covered in grease and exhaustion, his usual, "Hey, Em," was replaced by a weary sigh. Emily's heart sank as she watched him toss his bag onto the counter, rubbing his temples in frustration. "Long day?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. "You could say that," he muttered, grabbing a glass of water. "Just a lot of problems at the shop. I swear, some people don't know how to take care of their cars." Emily studied his face, the lines of stress etched deeper than usual. "Jake, can we talk?" "About what?" he replied, his tone distracted. "About us. About everything," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I won something today." Jake raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "What do you mean, won something?" I won the lottery," she admitted, her heart racing. "A significant amount. And, wait, what?" he interrupted, turning to face her fully, surprise etched across his face. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, I am. But before you get too excited, I need to tell you what I've been thinking." Jake's expression shifted from shock to confusion. "What do you mean?" "I've been worried about how this money might change things between us," Emily confessed, her voice shaking slightly. "I've even thought about divorce. I thought it would be easier to protect what we have if I distanced myself." Jake's eyes narrowed, and the tension in the air thickened. "Divorce? Emily, are you out of your mind? Why would you even consider that?" "Because I love you, and I don't want our relationship to suffer because of money," she explained, feeling tears prick her eyes. "I thought that maybe it was the best way to protect us." "Protect us?" he echoed, disbelief lacing his words. "You're talking about throwing away everything we've built together because of fear?" "Jake, please, let me explain," Emily pleaded, her heart racing. "I didn't want to burden you with this. You've been so stressed, and I thought if I handled it quietly, it would be better." "Emily, you're my wife. We face things together," he said, his voice rising. "You don't just get to decide to walk away because you think it's easier. What happened to us being a team?" The intensity of his words struck her like a blow. She had underestimated the strength of their bond, the foundation they had built together. "You're right. I should have talked to you sooner," she admitted, her voice trembling as she wiped away a tear. "I'm scared, Jake. I don't want to lose you." Jake took a step closer, his expression softening. "You're not going to lose me, but we need to communicate, Em. We need to figure this out together." In that moment, the walls she had built around her heart began to crumble. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I just didn't want to jeopardize what we have." Jake reached out, pulling her into a warm embrace. "We'll figure it out. Together. Just promise me you won't hide things from me anymore." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Emily felt the weight of her worries begin to lift. She understood now that love was about facing fears head-on, not running away from them. They would navigate this new chapter of their lives together, hand in hand. Emily stepped into the sterile, white-walled clinic, her heart beating a little faster than usual. It was time for her annual checkup, a routine she had never minded too much, but this time felt different. The recent upheaval in her life, a sudden windfall of money from the lottery, had left her in a state of constant contemplation. She took a deep breath as she noticed a bright poster on the wall while walking down the hallway. It read, "Fighting Together. Hope Against Serious Illness." The image of smiling faces, patients and their families, brought a lump to her throat. As she sat in the waiting room, her mind danced between the excitement of her newfound wealth and the gnawing fear of what it might do to her marriage with Jake. Would money change him? Would it change her? She thought about the plans she had been quietly making, contemplating a divorce to protect their love from the potential pitfalls of sudden affluence. The idea felt more like a betrayal than a safeguard, yet she felt cornered. "Emily?" The nurse's voice broke through her thoughts, and she nodded, following her into the examination room. The doctor entered shortly after, and they exchanged pleasantries before starting the checkup. "Everything seems normal," the doctor said, reviewing the results from her previous tests. "But I want to ensure we're being thorough. Let's check your blood pressure again." As the doctor continued with the examination, Emily's mind wandered back to the poster. Was it selfish to be so consumed by her own struggles when so many were fighting much tougher battles? The thought nagged at her, leaving her feeling heavy with guilt. Later that evening, as she returned home, Emily was greeted by the sight of Jake slumped on the couch, his face pale and tired. The sight of him sent a jolt through her, and she immediately dropped her bag, rushing to his side. "Jake, you don't look well," she said, her voice filled with concern. "I'm fine," he replied, though the weariness in his voice betrayed him. "Just a long day at work." Emily sat beside him, her heart racing. "You've been looking tired for days. Are you sure you're okay?" "Really, Em, it's nothing. Just a little stress," he insisted, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But Emily wasn't convinced. She felt the weight of her earlier thoughts crashing down on her. Should she really go through with the divorce when he might be dealing with something more serious? Just then, Jake winced slightly, and Emily's heart dropped. "Jake, please," she urged, placing a hand on his arm. "If you're in pain, you need to see a doctor. I can't just sit here and pretend everything is okay." He looked at her, a flash of frustration in his eyes. "I said I'm fine. It's just a few aches. It's nothing to worry about." But Emily's mind was already racing. What if it was something more? What if he was hiding something serious from her? The thought terrified her. "Jake, I love you. I don't want to lose you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. He softened at her words, and for a moment, it felt like the walls between them were starting to crumble. "I know, Emily. I don't want to burden you with my problems. You've got enough on your plate with everything that's happened. But you're not a burden. We're in this together, remember?" she pleaded. "Let's face this together. Please, just promise me you'll get checked out." Jake regarded her for a long moment, the tension in the room thick enough to cut. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, I'll go tomorrow, just to ease your mind." "Thank you," Emily whispered, relief washing over her. But as she prepared their dinner, her mind was still racing. What if Jake's issues were more than just stress? That night, after they'd eaten in relative silence, Emily found herself lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The darkness of their room was a stark contrast to the turmoil in her heart. She couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in. The decision to pursue a divorce felt heavier than before, and now it was intertwined with the fear of losing Jake to something she didn't even understand. The next day, she sat anxiously in the waiting room of the clinic again. This time not for herself, but for Jake. She kept glancing at her phone, willing it to ring with good news. With every passing minute, her heart sank deeper into uncertainty. Eventually, she spotted Jake walking toward her, his expression unreadable. "How did it go?" she asked, trying to read his face. "They want to run some more tests," he replied, his voice flat. "What kind of tests?" Just some blood work and an MRI. They think it might be something with my back, but I don't know, he said, his eyes distant. Emily's heart raced. But you'll be okay, right? They'll figure it out? He nodded slowly, though the worry in his eyes told a different story. Yeah, I hope so. I hate being a burden. You're not a burden, Jake. You're my husband and I love you, she said firmly, taking his hand in hers. We'll get through this together. Jake didn't respond, but she could feel the tension in his grip loosening slightly. They sat together in silence, and for the first time in days, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could navigate this storm together. That night, as they lay side by side, Emily turned to him. What if we use the money from the lottery to help people like you? People who are struggling with serious illnesses? Jake's brow furrowed as he processed her words. You mean, start a charity or something? Yeah, we could make a real difference, she suggested, her excitement bubbling over. We could help families who are facing what we're facing, or worse. It could give us a purpose. I don't know, Em. I mean, it sounds great, but I'm scared. What if I can't handle it? Emily squeezed his hand. We'll handle it together, just like we handle everything else. I believe in us. With that, a small smile broke through Jake's worry, and Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in a while, she saw a path forward, not just for herself, but for both of them. The fear of losing him began to fade, replaced by a resolve to stand by his side, no matter what challenges lay ahead. And in that moment, as they drifted off to sleep, Emily realized that even in the face of uncertainty, love had a way of illuminating the darkest paths. Emily felt a wave of dread wash over her as she sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of her thoughts pressing heavily on her chest. Just moments ago, she had received the news that Jake was diagnosed with a severe illness, a revelation that shattered the fragile peace she had been trying to maintain. The secrets she'd been harboring, the plans for a divorce she thought would protect their love, now seemed trivial and misguided in the face of such a harsh reality. She could hardly breathe, her mind racing with guilt and confusion. How could she have even considered ending their marriage when the very foundation of their life together was now under threat? Jake, she finally managed to say, her voice trembling. He sat across from her, his expression a mix of vulnerability and strength. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have thought about leaving. I shouldn't have let my fears take over like that. Jake looked up, his blue eyes filled with a mixture of pain and understanding. Emily, I didn't want you to find out this way, he replied softly. I was trying to protect you. I thought if I could get through this alone, it would be easier for you. Protect me? By hiding this from me? Emily's heart ached as she spoke. Jake, I want to be here for you. We're a team, remember? We're supposed to face everything together. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, which was beginning to show strands of gray that hadn't been there before. I know that, but I didn't want to burden you with my problems. You just won that money, and I didn't want to drag you down. I thought maybe I could handle it on my own. Maybe you could enjoy your life without worrying about me. Enjoy my life? Emily echoed incredulously. How can I enjoy anything knowing that you're suffering? You're the most important part of my life, Jake. I can't just pretend everything is fine. A heavy silence settled between them, the air thick with unsaid words and emotions. Emily felt a tear slip down her cheek, and Jake reached out, brushing it away gently with his thumb. I'm scared, Emily, he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. I don't know what this means for us, for our future. I don't want to lose you. You won't lose me, she promised fiercely. We'll get through this together. We'll fight this illness together. I'm here, and I want to help you. But what if I can't get better? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if saying the words out loud would make them too real. What if I can't work again? Or what if things change so much that you end up resenting me? Emily shook her head, her heart racing at his fears. I could never resent you for something like this. Life is unpredictable, Jake. We've always known that. Look at us. Who would have thought I'd win the lottery? But what matters is how we face these challenges. Together. The sincerity in her words seemed to reach him, and he exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a bit. "You're right. I just need time to process this. It's a lot to take in." "Then let's take it one step at a time," Emily suggested, her voice steady. "We can look into treatment options together. I want to be involved in every decision. You're not alone in this." A small smile flickered across Jake's face, a glimmer of the man she fell in love with. "Thank you, Em. I don't know what I'd do without you." As they sat together, the silence became more comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Emily felt a surge of determination. She would not let fear dictate their future. They would face this challenge head-on. With Jake's health hanging in the balance, the last thing she wanted was to dwell on their marital issues. Days turned into weeks as Jake began his treatment. Emily took on the role of caretaker, balancing her job at the library with doctor's appointments and medication schedules. She found herself relying heavily on Sarah, her friend and the only other person who understood the gravity of their situation. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting day, Emily met Sarah at their favorite cafe. "Hey, how's Jake doing?" Sarah asked, concern etched on her face as she took a sip of her coffee. Emily sighed, leaning back in her chair. "He's hanging in there, but it's tough. The treatments are draining him, and he's still dealing with so much fear. I can see it in his eyes." "I can't imagine what you both are going through," Sarah said gently, "but I'm here for you. If you need to talk or if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know." "Thank you, Sarah. Honestly, I don't know what I would do without your support. Just having someone to talk to helps a lot." Emily paused, looking down at her hands. "I feel so guilty for even thinking about the divorce before all this happened. It seems ridiculous now." "It's not ridiculous," Sarah reassured her. "You were scared. You thought you had to protect yourself. But the important thing is that you've chosen to be there for him now. And that takes strength, Emily." "I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing," Emily confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to be strong for him, but I also need to take care of myself. I'm scared of what the future holds for both of us." Sarah reached across the table, squeezing Emily's hand. "It's okay to feel scared, but remember, you're not alone in this. You have me, and you have Jake. You're all in this together, and that's what matters." As she spoke, a flicker of hope ignited within Emily. Perhaps this was their chance to redefine their relationship, to rebuild the trust and love that had been shaken. The illness was a challenge, yes, but it was also an opportunity for growth. "Let's brainstorm some ideas for how we can support other families going through similar situations," Emily suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. "If we could create something meaningful out of this, it might help us both heal." "I love that idea," Sarah replied, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. "We could start a support group, or even a foundation. You could use some of that lottery money to really make a difference in people's lives." Emily nodded, feeling a sense of purpose wash over her. "Yes, we could create a space where people can share their experiences, find support, and know they're not alone. It could help Jake and me, too." As they continued to discuss their ideas, Emily felt a renewed sense of hope. Even in the face of adversity, there was a way forward. She might have stumbled in her decisions earlier, but now, with Jake by her side and Sarah supporting them, they could turn their pain into something beautiful. They could create a legacy of love and resilience that would shine a light in the darkness. And as Emily left the cafe that day, she felt a spark of determination igniting within her. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it with Jake, hand in hand, ready to fight for their love and for the lives of others. Together, they would navigate this storm, emerging stronger and more united than ever before. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as she stared at the floor, lost in thought. The soft light of the late afternoon filtered through the curtains, casting gentle shadows that danced around the room, but her mind was miles away. Just days ago, her life had taken a turn that felt almost surreal. Winning the lottery had filled her with a rush of excitement, but now, as she contemplated the future, she felt an overwhelming weight on her chest. How could she enjoy this newfound wealth when everything around her seemed to be crumbling? Jake entered the room, his face drawn and weary. He had been trying to shake off the fatigue that had plagued him for weeks, but it was clear that it was taking a toll on him. As he noticed the somber expression on Emily's face, he sighed, running a hand through his tousled hair. "You okay, Em? You've been quiet since you got home." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "I'm fine, Jake. Just thinking." "About what?" he pressed, taking a step closer. The concern in his voice was genuine, but there was also an edge of frustration lurking beneath. "About us," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake furrowed his brow, confusion etched on his features. "Us? What's there to think about? We're doing fine, aren't we?" Emily hesitated, the words caught in her throat. She knew she needed to tell him the truth about her feelings, but fear held her back. I'm worried about what this money will do to us," she finally said, her voice trembling slightly. He crossed his arms defensively, his expression shifting to one of irritation. "It's just money, Emily. You think it's going to change everything? Just because we have some cash now doesn't mean we're different people." "But it does change things, Jake," she exclaimed, standing up abruptly. "It changes how we live, how we plan our future. What if it changes how we feel about each other?" Jake ran a hand over his face, trying to rein in his frustration. "You're overthinking this. We've been together for years. We've built a life based on love, not money. You really think a few extra zeros in our bank account is going to ruin that?" Emily sighed, her heart aching. "I don't want it to ruin us, but I'm scared. Scared that it will come between us." "Why don't you trust me?" he challenged, his voice rising slightly. "I'm not some greedy monster waiting to take advantage of a situation. I'm your husband. I love you." "I know you love me," she replied, her voice softening. "But you've been so stressed lately. I've seen you struggle at work, and I can't help but think that this money will only add to that pressure. I don't want to lose you, Jake." In that moment, the tension in the room shifted. Jake stepped closer, his anger dissipating as he took her hands in his. "Emily, I've been trying to figure out how to take care of us. I've been working extra hours, trying to save up for our future. I thought if I could get us ahead, if I could make things easier for us, you wouldn't have to worry. But I didn't want to stress you out with all of this." "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Because I didn't want to burden you," he confessed, his voice low. "I wanted to protect you. I thought if I could just hold on a little longer, everything would be okay." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she realized the depth of his intentions. "Jake, I had no idea. I thought you were just pushing me away because of everything that's happening." He shook his head, his thumb brushing away a tear that escaped her eye. "I would never push you away. I was trying to shield you, but in doing so, I just made everything worse." "Maybe we need to communicate better," she suggested softly. "We can't keep holding everything inside. It's tearing us apart." Jake nodded, his expression earnest. "You're right. I should have talked to you about everything. I thought I was doing the right thing." Emily took a deep breath, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and sadness. "I was actually thinking about getting a divorce," she admitted, her voice trembling as the words slipped out. "Divorce?" He stepped back, the shock evident on his face. "What? Why would you even consider that?" "Because I thought it was the only way to protect us," she explained, her voice breaking. "I didn't want the money to change how we feel about each other. I thought maybe it would be easier if we just—" "No," Jake interrupted, his voice rising again, but this time in desperation. "You can't just throw away everything we've built because of fear. We can figure this out together. We have to fight for what we have." Emily felt hope stirring within her. "You really think so?" "I know so," he replied firmly, stepping back towards her, his hands gripping her shoulders. "We'll face this together. I promise." Just then, Sarah, their mutual friend and Emily's confidant, knocked lightly on the door before entering, sensing the tension in the air. "Hey, is everything okay in here?" she asked, her gaze shifting between the couple. Emily exchanged a glance with Jake, and he nodded slightly. "We're okay," she said, her voice steadier now. "I overheard a bit of your conversation," Sarah said, her brow furrowing in concern. "I just wanted to make sure you both know that you're not alone in this. You have me." "Thank you, Sarah," Emily said, a grateful smile breaking through her earlier tears. We really appreciate it. Let's talk about this, Sarah suggested, her tone serious yet supportive. You both need to communicate, and I can help with that. I've seen what happens when people bottle things up, and it's never good. Yeah, we've realized that, Jake admitted, glancing at Emily. Good, Sarah said, her voice steady and encouraging. You have a lot of love between you. Don't let fear drive you apart. Emily, you've got a big heart, and Jake, you're a strong guy. Together, you can face anything. As the three friends continued to talk, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. Laughter replaced tension, and they began to strategize how to navigate the complexities ahead. Emily felt a renewed sense of hope, knowing that with Sarah's support, she and Jake could tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. Let's make a pact, Sarah suggested, her eyes sparkling with determination. No more secrets. You both need to be open about your fears and insecurities. It's the only way to make it work. I like that, Emily replied, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. Agreed, Jake said, nodding in affirmation. With the weight of uncertainty slowly lifting, Emily realized that love, when nurtured through communication and trust, could overcome even the most daunting challenges. They might not have all the answers, but they had each other, and that was enough. Emily sat at the wooden table in her modest living room, papers strewn across its surface like scattered leaves after a storm. The decision to found a support organization had been made in a whirlwind of emotions. But now, as she stared at the blank page before her, doubt crept in. She glanced at Jake, who was seated on the couch, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was flipping through pamphlets and notes, preparing for their first meeting with the team. The weight of their shared responsibility hung in the air, heavy yet electrifying. "Are you sure we're ready for this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Enjoying the video? Subscribe to our channel to receive more interesting content. Click the subscribe button and stay updated with the latest news. Jake looked up, his blue eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart flutter. "We've been through so much, Em. If we can handle everything that's happened, we can definitely do this." He paused, a small smile breaking through his earlier seriousness. "Plus, helping others will help us too." She nodded slowly, though a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. The idea was noble. The execution, however, felt monumental. What if we fail? What if we can't make a difference? Jake set down the pamphlet and leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Failure isn't the worst thing that could happen. Not trying is. If we don't at least attempt to help people, we'll never know what we could achieve. His voice was steady, filled with conviction. And besides, we have people who believe in us. Just then, there was muffled laughter from the kitchen. Sarah, their friend and Emily's confidant, had just arrived. The sound of her bright laughter filled the space with warmth, and Emily felt her spirits lift slightly. Sarah had always been a beacon of hope, a source of strength in times of uncertainty. "Hey, you two lovebirds, ready to change the world?" Sarah said as she stepped into the living room, a tray of cookies balanced precariously in her hands. Emily laughed, the tension in her shoulders easing as she took in Sarah's infectious enthusiasm. "More like trying to keep our heads above water," she replied, a hint of humor in her tone. "Come on, you're both going to do amazing things. Just think about it. This organization could help so many people." Sarah placed the tray down, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I can't wait to see what we come up with together. We're a team now." As they gathered around the table, Emily felt the familiar sense of camaraderie that had always existed between the three of them. It was comforting, knowing that they were all in this together. With Sarah's legal expertise and Jake's determination, they could create something truly special. "All right, let's brainstorm," Jake suggested, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "We need a name for the organization, and we should discuss what our main goals will be. Maybe we could start with something simple, like Hope in Action?" Sarah proposed, her brow scrunching in thought. "It conveys what we want to do, and it's easy to remember." Emily smiled at the suggestion. "I like that. It's hopeful, just like we need to be." The name resonated with her, capturing the essence of their mission. "All right, Hope in Action it is," Jake agreed, jotting it down. "Next, we should consider the kinds of support we want to provide. Financial assistance, emotional support, maybe even connecting patients with resources? Absolutely, Emily replied, her ideas starting to flow. We could also organize workshops and events where people can share their stories. That could really help foster a sense of community. As the conversation progressed, ideas bounced around the room, and Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. The initial fear of the unknown began to fade, replaced by a shared vision that galvanized them all. Don't forget about involving the community, Sarah added. We should reach out to local businesses for sponsorships and support. This needs to be a collaborative effort. Yes, I have some contacts at the local health clinic. They might be interested in partnering with us, Jake suggested, his eyes lighting up. I can reach out to them. As they continued to brainstorm and outline their plans, laughter and excitement filled the room. Emily felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for her friends, realizing that it was their unwavering support that helped her through her darkest moments. Let's not just focus on the logistics today. Let's also talk about the stories we want to share, Emily said, her tone shifting slightly. I think it's important to highlight real people and their struggles. It helps others understand the impact of what we're doing. Agreed, Sarah said, nodding enthusiastically. We should feature individuals who have faced adversity and show how they've overcome it. That will inspire others to get involved and support our cause. Just then, the doorbell rang, interrupting their planning session. I'll get it, Jake said, rising from his chair. When he opened the door, a young woman with bright, hopeful eyes stood there, her expression a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Hi, is this where the Hope in Action meeting is happening? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Yes. Come in, Jake replied, stepping aside to let her enter. I'm Jake, and this is Emily and Sarah. He gestured to his friends, who smiled warmly at the newcomer. I'm Lily, she introduced herself, her voice soft yet determined. I heard about your organization and wanted to see how I could help. I'm actually a patient. Her gaze shifted to the ground, and Emily sensed the weight of her words. Emily's heart ached at Lily's vulnerability. Thank you for coming, Lily. We're so glad to have you here. Your perspective is invaluable. Lily looked up, and there was a flicker of hope in her eyes. I want to help others who are going through similar struggles. I have a terminal illness, but I believe in the power of community. It's what keeps me going. The room fell silent, the gravity of Lily's words settling over them like a blanket. Emily felt a surge of admiration for the young woman. We would love to hear your story and have you involved in our initiatives, she said gently. You could inspire so many people. Really? Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Absolutely, Sarah chimed in, her expression earnest. Your experience can help us shape our mission and reach those who need support the most. Lily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and a smile began to form on her face. Thank you. I've always wanted to make a difference, even if just a little. As they began to discuss ideas and potential projects, Emily felt a surge of energy in the room. With Lily's passion and the shared commitment among them, it seemed that they were on the cusp of something transformative. Together, we can create a space where people feel safe to share their stories, Jake said, his voice steady and filled with conviction. A place where hope is tangible. The conversation flowed seamlessly, each person contributing their thoughts and experiences. Emily could see how this new endeavor was not only about helping others, but also about healing themselves. The bonds of friendship and purpose were becoming stronger, weaving a tapestry of resilience that would carry them forward through whatever challenges lay ahead. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of camaraderie and shared dreams, Emily realized that they were indeed ready to embark on this journey. Together, they could bring light to the lives of those who needed it most. And in doing so, they would rediscover the true meaning of hope, love, and community. In the heart of the bustling city, Sarah found herself sitting in her modest yet cozy office, surrounded by stacks of legal documents and client files. The fluorescent lights flickered above her, casting a harsh glare on the papers spread across her desk. Despite the chaos of her surroundings, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, particularly about her friend Emily and the recent upheaval in her life. Emily had always been strong, But the revelation of her winning the lottery had thrown a wrench into the simplicity that characterized her relationship with Jake. Just as she was contemplating the implications of Emily's newfound wealth, Sarah's phone buzzed insistently on her desk. It was a message from Emily, asking if they poderium esse encontrar. Sarah smiled to herself, grateful for the distraction. The two had always leaned on each other, particularly during difficult times, and this moment was no differente. Later that afternoon, Sarah met Emily at their favorite cafe, a quaint little place tucked away on a quiet street corner. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the soft chatter of other patrons created a warm ambience. As Emily entered, her face radiated a mixture of excitement and anxiety, the weight of her recent decisions evident in her eyes. "Hey, Em," Sarah greeted, pulling her friend into a hug. "You look well. You look like you've got a lot on your mind." Emily chuckled nervously as they settled into a corner table. "You have no idea," she replied, her fingers nervously twirling a strand of hair. "I need to talk to you about everything. It's all so overwhelming." "What is it? The lottery? Jake?" Sarah prodded gently, sensing the turmoil beneath Emily's composed facade. "I thought winning the lottery would change everything, but instead, it feels like I'm losing control," Emily confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been thinking about a divorce, Sarah. I don't want the money to ruin what Jake and I have." Sarah's heart sank at the words. "Divorce? Have you talked to him about this?" "No, not yet. I'm so scared of how he'll react. He's been under so much pressure at work, and I don't want to add to that. But I also can't shake the feeling that this money will change us." Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Em, I get it. But running away from your problems isn't the answer. You love Jake, don't you?" Sarah leaned forward, her tone earnest. "Of course I do. But what if he can't handle it? What if he—" Emily hesitated, searching for the right words. "What if he resents me for it? Have you considered that he might actually want to support you through this? Maybe he's just as worried about losing you," Sarah suggested, hoping to plant a seed of doubt in Emily's mind about her drastic decision. Emily sighed heavily, her gaze drifting out the window. "I just don't know if I can risk it. I've already started gathering the divorce papers." "Wait, what?" Sarah interrupted, her eyes widening in disbelief. "You're serious? I thought it would be better to protect myself, to protect us, but now I'm just confused," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Listen, you need to talk to him. Communication is key in any relationship, especially one that's facing such a significant change. You can't do this alone," Sarah encouraged, her heart aching for her friend. As they continued to talk, Sarah found herself contemplating her own life. Her marriage to Tom was crumbling under the weight of unfulfilled expectations and a lack of support for her career aspirations. The conversation with Emily brought her own struggles to the forefront of her mind. She had always been the one to help others, but who was there to help her? "Em, I want to help you through this," Sarah said, her voice firm. "I'll help you figure out how to talk to Jake, but you need to be honest with him. No more secrets." Emily nodded slowly, her expression a blend of relief and apprehension. "You're right. I'll talk to him. I just hope it doesn't blow up in my face." As they left the cafe, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was determined to support Emily, but she also knew she had to confront her own feelings about her marriage. If Emily was willing to fight for her relationship, maybe she could too. Days turned into weeks, and as Emily prepared to have the difficult conversation with Jake, she found herself increasingly drawn to the idea of helping others. The thought of using part of her lottery winnings to create a support organization for those with serious illnesses lingered in the back of her mind. She wanted to make a difference, to turn her fortune into something meaningful, especially now that Jake's health was in jeopardy. Meanwhile, Sarah was facing mounting pressure at work. Her boss had made it clear that there was a promotion on the line, but she would have to sacrifice her personal life to secure it. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the office, Sarah confided in Emily over the phone. "I don't know what to do, Em. I feel like I have to choose between my career and my marriage. Tom is so unsupportive of my ambitions, and it's tearing me apart," Sarah admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "Why can't you do both? Maybe Tom just needs to understand how important this is to you, Emily suggested, her own heart heavy with the knowledge of her friend's struggles. I wish it were that simple. He wants me to be this traditional wife, and I feel suffocated, Sarah replied, frustration evident in her tone. Then fight for what you want. You deserve to be happy, just like I do, Emily encouraged, inspired by her friend's determination. As Sarah hung up the phone, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she could find a way to balance both her career and her marriage, just as Emily was learning to navigate her relationship with Jake. The next day, inspired by Emily's journey, Sarah made a bold decision. She approached her boss and laid out her vision for a project that could help the firm while allowing her to maintain a healthier work-life balance. To her surprise, her boss was receptive, and they began discussing potential opportunities for collaboration that would allow Sarah to shine in her career without sacrificing her personal life. Meanwhile, Emily and Jake had an emotional conversation that finally peeled back the layers of their struggles. They had both been fighting their own battles in silence, afraid to burden the other. As they spoke, the walls of misunderstanding began to crumble, and they realized that their love was worth fighting for. In the midst of all this, Sarah felt a newfound sense of strength. She decided to volunteer at Emily and Jake's organization, offering her legal expertise to help those in need, while also rekindling her passion for helping others. The three of them became a formidable team, each drawing strength from the other as they navigated their respective challenges. Through the shared experiences of love, loss, and the quest for purpose, Sarah found clarity in her own life. She learned that while relationships can be complicated, the bonds of friendship and support can shine light in even the darkest of times. Emily's journey had inspired her to reclaim her own narrative, and together, they all began to heal and grow, proving that even in the depths of despair, hope and resilience could flourish. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the community center, Emily stood nervously at the entrance of the event. The air buzzed with excitement, the chatter of guests mingling with the soft notes of a string quartet playing in the background. This was the first big event for the organization that she and Jake had founded, a foundation aimed at supporting individuals facing serious illnesses. It was a significant moment, not just for the community, but for their relationship, which had been through an emotional tempest over the last few months. Jake, dressed in a crisp navy suit that highlighted his sturdy build, was preparing to take the stage. Emily watched him from a distance, her heart swelling with pride and anxiety. Just a few months ago, they had been on the brink of separation, both grappling with their own fears and insecurities. Now, here they were, united by a common purpose, ready to share their journey with the world. Are you ready for this? Sarah, Emily's friend and their legal advisor, approached her with a reassuring smile. She had been instrumental in helping them navigate the legalities of the organization and had also been a steadfast support through the ups and downs of Emily and Jake's relationship. Emily nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I think so, but what if he gets emotional? What if he talks about everything we've been through? Then that's exactly what makes it authentic, Sarah replied, placing a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. You both have a story to tell, and it's one that will resonate with so many people tonight. As they spoke, Jake stepped up to the microphone, his presence commanding attention. The room quieted, and all eyes were on him. Emily's heart raced as she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She could see the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, a reminder of the battles they had fought together. Thank you all for being here tonight, Jake began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. When Emily and I first received the news about my illness, it felt like our world was crumbling. I was terrified, not just for myself, but for our future. I thought I was protecting her by not sharing my struggles, by trying to shield her from the weight of it all. Emily felt her throat tighten as she listened, her mind flashing back to the countless nights spent worrying about Jake, wondering why he had pulled away. He continued, but what I learned through that experience is that love isn't about shielding the other person from pain. It's about facing it together. It's about fighting side by side, even when the odds seem insurmountable. A soft murmur of understanding rippled through the audience. Emily felt tears prick at her eyes as she caught a glimpse of the empathy etched on the faces around her. Jake paused, collecting himself. We decided to start this foundation not just to help others, but to remind ourselves and everyone here that hope exists even in the darkest times. It's about community, support, and the love that binds us together. The room erupted in applause, and Emily couldn't help but smile through her tears. In that moment, she realized how far they had come, not just as individuals, but as a couple. Their love had been tested, but it had also deepened in ways she had never imagined. As Jake stepped down from the podium, Emily rushed to him, enveloping him in a warm embrace. "You were incredible," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Jake smiled, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and relief. "I was just being honest. I couldn't have done it without you, Em. You're my rock." Sarah joined them, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You both are remarkable. The impact you're going to have is going to be huge," she said, her voice filled with conviction. As the evening progressed, the couple mingled with guests, sharing their story and the mission of the foundation. They spoke with families who had been directly affected by illnesses, listened to their struggles, and offered words of encouragement. Each conversation reinforced the bond between Emily and Jake, reminding them of the resilience of the human spirit. Later in the evening, as the event transitioned into a silent auction, Emily and Jake took a moment to step outside for some fresh air. The night was cool, the stars twinkling above them, providing a serene backdrop to their shared moment. "I can't believe how many people showed up," Emily remarked, leaning against the railing. "It feels surreal." Jake looked at her, his expression softening. "It's just the beginning, Em. We're going to make a difference. I can feel it." "Yes, we are," she agreed, her heart swelling with hope. "And we'll do it together." Jake reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I want you to know that I'm committed to us, to this. No more secrets, okay? Whatever comes our way, we face it together." Emily nodded, her heart racing. "I promise. I've learned the hard way that keeping things bottled up only makes it worse. I want us to be open with each other." "Good," Jake replied, pulling her closer, "because there's nothing I'd rather do than face the world with you by my side." As they shared a tender kiss under the stars, Emily felt a renewed sense of hope. They had weathered storms, faced fears, and emerged stronger than ever. Together, they were capable of overcoming anything life threw their way. And as they returned to the warmth of the community center, hand in hand, Emily knew that love, true love, was about embracing the journey with all its challenges and triumphs. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden hue across the living room, Emily sat on the couch, her heart racing. She clutched a stack of envelopes, each one filled with letters that made her skin crawl. The recent success of their organization had attracted attention, but not all of it was good. She felt an icy grip of dread as she recalled the strange letters Jake had begun to receive, threatening notes that chilled her to the bone. "Jake," she called out, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet house. "We need to talk." Jake emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. The worry lines on his forehead deepened as he noticed the tension in Emily's voice. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern etching his features. Emily took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. "It's about the letters you've been getting." Jake's expression turned serious. "What about them?" "They're not just random," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Someone is trying to intimidate you. Intimidate us?" Jake's brows furrowed, and he ran a hand through his hair. "What do you mean? You think it's connected to the organization?" "I don't know," Emily replied, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "But we need to figure out who is behind this. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." He stepped closer, the warmth of his presence momentarily easing her fears. "I've been trying to brush it off, Emily. I didn't want to worry you." "Worry me? Jake, this is serious," she exclaimed, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "We've built something incredible together. I won't let anyone tear us apart." Jake sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. "I know, but it's not just about us. I can't help but think that whoever is sending those letters might be targeting the organization, too. I'm scared." "Scared?" Emily echoed, her heart aching for him. You don't have to be. We'll face this together, I promise. At that moment, a determined glint appeared in her eyes. I'll talk to Sarah. She can help us investigate. We need to be proactive about this. Jake nodded slowly, gratitude flickering in his gaze. You're right. I just wish this wasn't happening. I want to focus on our mission, on helping others. Emily reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. We will, but we need to ensure your safety first. You matter to me more than anything else. With that, they made a pact to confront the shadows looming over their lives. Later that evening, Sarah arrived, her demeanor serious as she sensed the urgency in Emily's voice. What's going on? She asked, her brow furrowed. Sit down, Sarah, Emily urged, gesturing toward the chairs in the living room. We need your help. Jake's been receiving threatening letters. Sarah's expression shifted to one of concern as she leaned forward. What do they say? Emily handed her one of the letters, watching as Sarah's eyes scanned the words. They're vague, but they're definitely meant to scare us. They mention his health and imply that someone wants to see him suffer. A heavy silence settled in the room as Sarah processed the information. This is serious, she said, looking up at Jake. Have you considered involving the authorities? Jake shook his head. I don't want to escalate things unless we have to. I just want to protect what we've built. Sarah's brow furrowed in thought. We could do some digging ourselves first. Maybe we can find out who's behind this without making it public. Can you help us? Emily asked, her voice hopeful. Of course, Sarah replied, her resolve firm, but we need to be careful. If someone is targeting you, they might be watching. We have to keep this discreet. Over the next few days, the three of them operated like a well-oiled machine. Emily and Jake continued their work at the organization, while Sarah took the lead in investigating the source of the threats. She contacted a few trusted contacts in law enforcement and began to compile a list of individuals who might have a motive against Jake. Have you thought about who could be behind this? Sarah asked one afternoon as they gathered in Emily and Jake's living room, poring over potential suspects. Jake sighed, running a hand over his face. Honestly, I can't think of anyone. We've been focused on helping others. I didn't think I'd attract any enemies. Sometimes people can be envious of what you have, even if it's not obvious, Sarah mused, her eyes narrowing in concentration. What about those who didn't support your organization? Anyone who felt wronged? Emily watched Jake's expression shift as he considered her words. There was a donor who pulled out recently. He didn't take it well when we started focusing on other causes. Do you think he could be behind this? Emily asked, her heart racing. It's worth looking into. Sarah nodded, making notes as they spoke. I'll dig into him. But in the meantime, we need to keep you safe, Jake. If it comes to it, we might need to get a restraining order or something similar. Jake's eyes widened. I didn't want it to come to that. I don't want this to overshadow the good we're doing. Emily squeezed his hand, offering silent support. We'll figure this out together. We can't let fear dictate our actions. As they continued to brainstorm, Emily felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew they had faced much worse together, and they would emerge from this trial stronger than ever. The bond they shared had been forged in adversity, and now it was being tested once more. Later that evening, after Sarah had left, Emily turned to Jake, her heart heavy with concern. You know I'm here for you, right? No matter what happens. He nodded, his eyes softening. I know, and I appreciate you more than I can say. I wish I could protect you from all of this. You're not alone in this fight, Emily reassured him, her voice steady. We're in this together, remember? You're my partner in everything. Jake smiled faintly, his expression revealing a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. I don't say it enough, but I'm grateful for you. You've shown me what it means to truly fight for something. As they embraced, the weight of their challenges felt a little lighter, if only for a moment. They were determined to face the unknown together, ready to confront whatever shadows threatened to overshadow their newfound purpose. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the event venue, a palpable sense of excitement filled the air. The charitable gala, organized by Emily and Jake, was in full swing. Guests mingled, laughter echoed, and the clinking of glasses created a symphony of celebration. Yet, amidst the festive atmosphere, Emily could feel a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. She had always believed in the power of community and the importance of giving back, but the weight of the past few months hung heavily on her shoulders. As she stood at the front of the room, ready to share her speech, she glanced at Jake. He was talking to a small group of attendees, his face lit up with passion as he spoke about their organization. She felt a surge of pride wash over her. Despite the turmoil they had faced, they had come together to create something meaningful. Just then, Emily noticed Sarah weaving through the crowd, her expression one of determination. They had both agreed that this night was crucial not only for raising funds, but also for solidifying their mission to support those battling severe illnesses. "Are you ready?" Sarah whispered as she approached Emily, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Emily took a deep breath, nodding. "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, you're not alone. We're in this together," Sarah reassured her, placing a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. Just as Emily was about to step up to the podium, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. A figure emerged from the shadows, their face partially obscured. As they drew closer, Emily's heart sank. It was Max, an old acquaintance from their neighborhood, someone she had considered a friend. He had always been a bit of a loner, but in recent months, he had become increasingly erratic. "Emily!" he shouted, his voice dripping with bitterness. "You think you can just waltz in here and pretend everything is fine? You're a fraud." The room fell silent, all eyes on Max as he pushed through the crowd. Jake immediately stepped forward, his protective instincts kicking in. "What's going on, Max? You need to leave." But Max didn't back down. "No, you all need to hear this. Emily, you were never meant to have this kind of money. You don't deserve it. You're just like everyone else, greedy and selfish." Emily's heart raced as she realized the implications of his words. She had always tried to help others, yet here was someone accusing her of being the very thing she despised. "What are you talking about, Max?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Don't act innocent. I know about the threats. You think I didn't notice the way you and Jake have changed? How you've built your lives on the backs of others?" He gestured violently, anger radiating from him. The crowd murmured, confusion and concern written across their faces. Jake stepped closer to Emily, his brows furrowing. "What threats? What are you accusing her of?" Max turned his gaze to Jake, contempt etched on his face. "You don't even know, do you? They were meant for you. All this time, I've been watching you both, seeing how you've thrown your money around like it's nothing. But it's not just about the money. It's about the lives you're playing with." Emily felt her stomach drop. The threats Jake had received, the shadowy figures lurking in their peripheral vision. Could it all be connected to Max? "What do you mean?" she pressed, desperate for clarity. "They're jealous. They hate what you've become. They wanted to see you fail, and they'll do anything to make that happen," he spat, his voice filled with a mix of rage and desperation. Suddenly, Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "Max, stop. You're out of line. We're all here to support each other, not tear each other down. This isn't helping anyone." Max scoffed, but Sarah's words seemed to momentarily deflate his fury. "You don't understand," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I was struggling too. I lost everything while you were busy living your fairy tale." Emily's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "Max, I didn't know. I'm sorry you're going through this, but attacking us won't change anything. We're trying to help." He paused, his expression shifting from anger to vulnerability. "Help? You think you can just throw money at problems? That's not how it works." "Maybe not," Emily replied softly, her heart racing as she searched for the right words. "But we're here to listen, to understand. We want to create a community where everyone has a chance." Max's shoulders sagged, the fight leaving him. "You don't get it. It's not just about money. It's about trust. It's about feeling like you belong. And you've changed too much." Jake stepped forward, his voice steady. "We're still the same people we've always been. This money doesn't define us. It just gives us a chance to help more people. You're one of us, Max. You can be a part of this community." Emily nodded in agreement. "We need each other. I know it's hard to see, but we can't do this alone. We all have struggles." Max looked around at the faces of the guests, the tension in the room palpable. Slowly, a flicker of understanding crossed his face. I didn't mean to lash out like that. I just feel lost." In that moment, the air shifted. Emily took a step closer to Max, her voice gentle. "It's okay to feel lost. We can help each other find our way. Let's talk about it together." As the crowd murmured in agreement, Emily felt a sense of solidarity blooming in the room. They had all faced their battles, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could forge a path forward together. With a deep breath, she turned back to the crowd, her voice steady and clear. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This is not just about raising funds. It's about building a community. We all have stories, struggles, and dreams. Let's not lose sight of that." As she spoke, the tension began to dissipate, replaced by a shared understanding. Emily could feel the strength of their collective hope, and in that moment, she knew they would emerge from the darkness stronger than before. The bonds of friendship and compassion would guide them through, illuminating a path filled with promise and resilience. And as she looked around at the faces of her friends, Jake, Sarah, and even Max, Emily realized that despite the challenges ahead, they were no longer alone. Together, they would face whatever came next, united by their shared commitment to making a difference in the world. We hope you were moved and inspired by our story. We want to hear your opinion. Leave a comment below, share your impressions, and your own stories of resilience and hope. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next emotional videos. Join us on this journey and follow more incredible stories. See you next time.